post and the tweet as well. So
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the South Florida Power BI user group. My name is Adriano, and I'm here with Thimantha. Hello, Thimantha. How are you?
hello, Adriano. I'm doing great. What about you? Yeah.
I am well, thank you, and thank you very much for making the time to be here with us.
Right. Yeah, it's a privilege for me to be at the South Florida Power BI user group. So I would love to contribute as usual. So I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. Hey, true honor here for us all, and to have you here presenting on this exciting topic, talking about Power BI above and beyond with calculation groups.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Right. So I'm Thimantha Vidanagamage. So I'm from Sri Lanka. I'm currently in Toronto, Canada. For my higher studies, I'm working as an external BI consultant for Intelligent, which was previously known as Fortitude. So I just love working with data, and I would love to share what I learned from the data, from working with data with the community as well. So that's why I am here.
All right. Hey, thank you. And also tell us a bit about your career and how you reach your current position, what are you doing, what technology you like to work on.
Right. So, talking about my career, currently I'm working as an external consultant for Intelligent. Intelligent was previously known as Photo. They rebranded it to Intelligent very recently. So, Intelligent is the only Microsoft Gold partner for data analytics and platform in Sri Lanka. So, I have been working there for the past 3 years, providing consultancy services. So what I basically do is provide Microsoft data and AI solutions to clients in Sri Lanka and also overseas. So that's basically my role at Fortitude, or previously currently Intelligent. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the presentation as well?
Right. So this presentation is about above and beyond with calculation groups in Power BI. What I'll be doing in this session is showing you guys the true potential of calculation groups with Power BI. The use cases that you guys can go ahead with in real world scenarios. So that's what this session is all about. So we're really excited to see how things will go for you guys.
Awesome. All right. Before we get started, I would like just to ask everyone out there who is currently watching, please take a minute and use the live chat. Let us know, where are you located at? We want to have an idea where everybody's at. And just also remember to subscribe and use the live chat for your questions during the live stream. If you're watching us after the presentation has completed, please just use the comment section for us to follow up with you with any questions. All right. Let me just drop a message here, folks. Remember there to subscribe, use the live chat for our conversations. All right, we have Winston. Thank you, Winston, for joining us from Phoenix, Arizona. All right. And I also like to take this opportunity to invite Winston and everybody else out there watching us right now to join us to the Power BI Fest 2020 coming up in just a couple days. It will start on, actually, we will start on Friday, the 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Because what is being used there is the Helsinki time, Helsinki, Finland time. So it is 0 hours in Helsinki is when we're starting, which relates to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So everybody here in the US has an opportunity to get right from the beginning. US and Canada, by the way, where Thimantha is at.
Right, yeah, yeah, but it's
So,
the same time zone. So yeah, finally I'm back to glad to be in the same time zone. Actually, I think the last time we had this session with Microsoft Data and AI South Florida user group, I woke up at 3 a.m. to do the session. So
wow.
from Sri Lanka. So this time it's a lot better. So really happy about that.
That's great, man. See? So check it out, folks. I'm gonna enter here as well. It is called the event. It is called the Power BI Fest, and a fantastic opportunity for everyone to learn from top speakers. You're gonna see Thimantha there and other great speakers from around the world, delivering great content on Power BI, DAX, machine learning integration, calculation groups, and much more. All right. All right, folks. Let's check it out now. If Thimantha, do you have anything to add, or you ready to start?
I'm ready to go.
Great then.
Right.
So it's all you there.
Right. Thank you very much, Adriano, first of all, for this opportunity. Really glad to be here and speak at the South Florida Power BI user group. So, talking about getting back into the session, uh, uh, this session is about basically about power calculation groups in terms of identifying the full potential actual potential of calculation groups in Power BI. I'm assuming that you guys have the basic knowledge in Power BI when I'm presenting this session. If not, it's completely fine. You guys, in case if you guys find something confusing or something confusing, you guys are free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to help you guys out. So you can reach me on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So yeah, all up to you guys. If there's any clarifications, you guys can always reach out to me. Otherwise, I'll be covering some basics in this session on calculation groups as well. So you guys should be fine off. For those who don't know me, I'm Thimantha Vidanagamage. I love working with Microsoft Data Platform technologies such as Microsoft Power BI, Azure Analysis Services, and Azure Data Factory. The most important thing out of all the details that you see in the screen right now is my Twitter handle at Thimantha V. So please follow me on Twitter at Thimantha V. Moving into the agenda for today. Firstly, we'll be looking at some basics in calculation groups with Power BI. And afterwards, I'll be showing you a variety of use cases for calculation groups in Power BI that you guys can use with real world scenarios. Right, so real world scenarios. So that's what will be that's what the agenda will be for today. Right, so let's get right into it. And firstly, it is important for us to know what are calculation groups. So calculation groups is a feature in DAX that allows you to minimize redundant measures um, with the same calculation, logic, or even expression. Um, Primarily, these calculation groups were uh, used for time intelligence, but that is not the only use case for calculation groups. There is a lot more potential in these calculation groups that you guys can use with real world scenarios. So, what I'll be doing in this session is shedding some light in terms of the potential in calculation groups in Power BI. Um, but that does not mean I will take you guys through a lot of complexity. I will try my level best to keep things simple as possible so that you guys can uh, uh, grab it out and use it comfortably uh, in your real world scenarios. Uh, and moving into the platforms in which you can use calculation groups, you can use calculation groups uh, with Power BI, Azure Analysis Services, and SQL Server Analysis Services. But SQL Server Analysis Services. And something that you should keep note of is that you can only use you can only use calculation groups with tabular models. Specifically, Power BI is definitely it only allows development in tabular models, so that's that. And Azure Analysis Services allows development in tabular models only as well. But when it comes to SQL Server Analysis Services, it only supports um, uh, uh, calculation groups in tabular models. It does not support calculation groups in multi-dimensional models with SQL Server Analysis Services. So that's something really to keep in mind. And also something to keep in mind is that whether it's Azure Analysis Services or SQL Server Analysis Services, uh, the compatibility level should always be 1500 or higher in order to use calculation groups in your respective models. So that's something to really keep in mind as well. So that's a bit about platforms that you guys can use calculation groups with. And so in this session, what we'll be discussing is calculation groups with Power BI. We'll not be focusing on in detail on Azure Analysis Services or SQL Server Analysis Services. So when it comes to Power BI, you should use an external tool called Tabular Editor with Power BI to use calculation groups. So external tools are tools that are created by third parties that are developed by third parties for specific requirements, and that is allowed to be used in Power BI. So some of these very popular external tools are Tabular Editor, which we'll be using today, and there is something called DAX Studio and much more. So uh, we'll be using the external tool Tabular Editor for calculation group for our calculation groups in Power BI, and basically that's what you should use uh, when you are when you are creating calculation groups in Power BI. And moving into the components of a calculation group, there are two very specific components of a calculation group. One is the calculation group itself, right, which holds all the respective logic and the measures. And the other is the calculation, something called a calculation item, which which stores the respective um, calculation or logic or expression which can be used across measures. So those are the two key components of a calculation group. So if you guys don't get what that means, that's completely fine. We'll be going through a lot of demos, and you should be able to get it afterwards. Right. So that's a bit of basics about calculation groups. So let's move into a quick demo, a quick example to understand the concept behind the calculation groups. Looking at this example, so just think of a scenario, real world scenario, where you have two measures. One measures in a specific data model in Power BI. You have two measures. You have a measure called sales amount in that model and a measure called sales quantity in that model. And analytics is done with those two measures with Power BI and provided to the clients, right? Basically what basically reports and everything are created, and the required analytics is done to with these measures. And moving further, so as the time goes, there is a uh, end user requirement to that they want to see the last year sales amount, the last year sales amount, and the sales quantity, last year sales quantity, as measures for self-service BI and in the report as well, right? So how do you use to fulfill such a requirement? Before the calculation groups came into play is that you created two separate measures with the last year logic referring to the sales amount or the measure, and you build a last year logic for that, and basically you kept them in two separate measures, one for a last year sales amount and another for last year sales quantity. So you have two separate measures, and it did the job for us, and it fulfilled the client requirement, and it fulfilled the reporting requirements, and there was no issue with that. But with calculation groups, this is not the right way to go about things anymore. What you should do, you can do this with a calculation group uh, by just having a single calculation group with a calculation item called last year, which shows the repeating last year logic, right? So as you can see, if I get back to the previous example, previous slide, uh, you have the last year sales amount and the last year sales quantity. There is a repetition of logic here for two separate measures, right? You basically repeat the logic to do the same thing in two different measures. But with calculation groups, that doesn't happen anymore. The logic is saved in a calculation item, and whenever it's required, what you do is you refer into the respective base measure. It could be a sales amount or sales quantity. And what happens is that um, the logic is applied for the referred measure, and you can get the output with that. So that's the right way to go about things moving further with calculation groups. All right, moving, that takes us to the very first demo of this session, which is the time intelligence demo. What I'll be doing in this demo is basically repeating what I showed you guys. Basically, actually putting the actual scenario that we just example that we just discussed, which is the last year scenario, into play in this first demo. So let's get into our first demo and see how it's like. My first demo is, so to access the first demo, I need to access my data model, which is in a Power BI desktop file. And this is basically my data model that I'll be using for this demo and for the other demos as well. Let me just remove just minimize the unnecessary stuff. And I have my model here. And you can see that I had fulfilled the same requirement uh, uh, that was I mentioned previously, which is if I get you back to that, uh, which is I had done the same thing that I had illustrated here, which is I had created this LY sales amount measure and a LY sales quantity measure. So that is visible in my model right here, which is sorry about that. So let me just get you back. Yeah, so that is created in my model right here. You can see in the right hand side, sorry, you can see in the right hand side that I have a measure called L by sales quantity and L by sales amount. So this is not the right way to go about things, as I told you previously, right? So what you need to do is create a calculation group to fulfill this requirement. First thing in creating a calculation group is you have to access the external tools and access your tabular editor. I had accessed my tabular editor right here. So when you just click on it, you should be able to access it. And in tabular editor, your entire data model will be open there. And you should be able to see your entire model as you can see in the screen right now. So that is your tabular editor. And what I'll be doing is what I need to do is I need to create a calculation group, right? So that's what we'll be focusing on in this demo. And yeah, so everything else you guys can have a look. In terms of data sources perspectives, I'll not be covering any of that. So my focus would entirely be on calculation groups in this session. So let's quickly look at how we can create a calculation group. Basically, you can see a range of folders when you access that your model is classified into when you access your model with tabular editor, which is just to how you do that is very basic. Just access navigate to external tools and head into the tabular editor and just click on that, and you should see your model open in tabular editor, classified under various folders. So what we'll be interested about in this session is this folder called tables. Why is that? Because that's where you create the calculation groups. So to create a calculation group, the first thing you want to do is right click and navigate yourself into create new and get into the option where it says calculation group. And that should create a calculation group right under the list of tables that you see under the table folder. And what you need to do is provide an appropriate name for your calculation group. In this case, I would provide my name as time intelligence. I find time intelligence as the most appropriate name here. And I would click on the down arrow key and click on the drop down, and that would show me the calculation items, which shows the repeating logic and the expressions from the previous measures. Basically, the repeating logic, expressions that and so on. You can call it any way that's comfortable to you, but I know I hope that you guys understand what that is, but if it's not, when we are going ahead with this, you should be able to understand that. So we have created the time intelligence calculation group, and when you click on the drop down icon, you should be able to see a subfolder called calculation items, which stores the calculation items or the repeating logic. And you should see some column name or an attribute called name here. So name is basically the attribute which contains all the calculation items that are stored in under the calculation items folder. So you need to provide an appropriate name for this particular attribute as well. So in this case, I would call this time calculation. Right. So that is done. We had basically created a calculation group right now, and we had renamed our base attribute, which shows the calculation items, as time calculation. And next thing is the most important thing, which is to create the calculation item itself. So in this case, we have just one calculation item, which is the last year calculation item. Just to show you the actual effect of that is I would access my model, and in my model, what I would do is I would get my repeating logic extracted right from here. So you can see my logic is repeating for last year's sales amount and last year's sales quantity, right? Only the base measure is changing, as you can see in the screen right now. So I would just grab one of it and just copy that, copy the logic there, and I would access my tabular model and get myself to the calculation items folder, right click on it and click on new calculation item. This would create a new calculation item for me, and I should rename that in an appropriate name. So I would call that last year this time around. And that is calculation item. That is how I create a calculation item. Now I need to paste my repeating logic that I copied from here into my calculation item, right? So I had basically copied the repeating logic, and now it's time for us to understand, pay attention to the section of this logic that does not repeat. Now, what does not repeat is, I'm sorry, what does not repeat is this base measure, right? You can see the sales amount base measure used for the LY sales amount, and for the LY sales quantity, you can see the sales quantity base measure used. So there's a difference, right? That's the only part of the logic that makes each of the logics unique. So that will be the section that we'll be focusing on. So if you leave the logic in your calculation item this way, this would only base your results on the sales amount base measure. But you don't want to do that, right? You want the analytics from the sales quantity base measure as well, right? So to provide the dynamic referencing from a measure to measure with the same logic, we use some specific functions for calculation groups. One of those very popular functions is a function called selected measure. Selected measure is like the most popular function, because what it does is it basically refers to a measure that you had selected, and it basically applies the logic to that. And that's what I'll be talking about most of the time in this session as well. But there are much more additional functions to this, such as selected measure. Then you have another measure called selected measure name, selected measure name. So there are a lot of variances in that, but selected measure is like the most important function moving further with calculation groups. Basically, that's the most important function that you need to keep in mind to go above and beyond with calculation groups in Power BI. So what we'll do is we'll use the selected measure right here. So first thing I'll do is I would remove the sales amount, since I don't want to show static or fixed analytics from the sales amount. I want it to change according to the base measure that I select. So I would select, in this case, uh, according to the measure that's selected. So for that purpose, I would use a function called selected measure. So this is how you basically write selected measure, very basic selected measure, and basically you open and close the bracket, and that's about it. And the next thing you want to do is you want to save it, uh, basically accept changes, right? So I just click on the tick, and that would do the job for you. You have saved the logic there, and you have to save the model, and that's really basic. You can just go in here, save changes to the connected database, and that's basically it. And your changes should reflect in your model. As you can see in your right hand side, you can see uh, that our calculation group called time intelligence is created in the model, in the right hand side of your screen, right? So just to assure that everything works all right, so you can go for a refresh now, which you will see highlighted in yellow, like as you can see in the screen right now, with a button called refresh now. Just click on refresh now, and it should refresh, and you should see the time intelligence measure, time intelligence calculation in your uh, calculation group in your data model. And you should be able to see the attribute that we had created as well. And if I just drag and drop this attribute, let me see. Yeah, if I just drag and drop this attribute, and maybe let's use it as a filter this time around, you can see that you can see that you can see the last year calculation item right inside this attribute that we renamed in tabular editor, right? So that is visible right here. So all you need to do at this stage is basically head into the model, and so you don't need to have separate measures in here anymore. So what I'll do is I would remove that, and you would see able to see the base measure. And once you click on the respective cells, I'm sorry, once you click on the respective I'm sorry. Once you select the respective option in uh, the time calculation, basically, once you select the respective calculation item, you should see the effect in your sales amount, in the sales amount base measure, right? So that's what it does. So this can be visualized in different ways. So let me just show you that as well. So last year's sales, you can visualize it, and you can visualize and you can use it in different ways as well. One way is what I had done here, used as a slicer, but you can use it as a visual level filter in the filter pane, or you can use that as a page level filter as per your preference. So yeah, so most of the time what we do is use it as a slicer, calculation groups as a slicer, or a visual level filter as per the specific requirement of the client. So in this case, I would show you how it works with the visual level filter as well. What you basically do is just use some kind of visual. Let me, that's not the ideal visual for going on with it. Oh, let me just take something else, maybe customer. Yeah, customer name. And I would just plot a very basic visual here. And what I would do is I would just use my base measure as sales amount. And the next thing I want to do is go to filters on this visual option and make sure that I have this time calculation filter. inside that inside the filter pane respect to that visual, and make sure that's selected, which shows me the last year cells. I'm not really sure. I think it's because I haven't selected a year here that it doesn't work out. But it should ideally work out. Yeah, I guess that should be the issue. Right, yeah, that was the issue. So I haven't selected an year previously. That's why it did not show much of an effect. So you should be able to see the effect now with calculation groups. So that's basically how you build the calculation groups, and the how you can use it. And I hope that covered the basics in terms of um, how and when to how to technically use calculation groups in Power BI, and the ways you can use it. And also, I hope you understand the concept, very basic concept behind these calculation groups. So, as with previously, we are not repeating the logic anymore. We are using the base measures, sales amount and sales quantity as far requirement, and we are referring to one specific logic that we had built, that we had maintained for last year in our calculation item, as a calculation item in our calculation group. So that's what we had basically done in this uh, in this demo. And that leads us to our second demo. So let me quickly take you to that. So that's the measure switch scenario that I'll be talking about, right? For that scenario, I have a separate report called sales analytics report page. So that's what you see in the screen right now. And um, so basically, what this what this page, report page, shows is sales by customer, sales by product, and this should be sales by product. I would, yeah, that's fine. It should be sales by product, sales by customer, and the monthly sales breakdown, basically the sales breakdown over time. So that's what this report page shows you guys. That's basically the sales amount. So basically what this report shows you is the sales amount by customer, by product, and over the period of time, over a specific period of time, right? So that's basically how this report page is. But later on, a client requirement came in that saying that the client wants, or the end user wants to see the sales quantity and do the same kind of analytics with sales quantity as well. All right. So what you do is, if this happened like ages back, what you did was you repeated the same page, you duplicated the same page, and you referred the sales quantity measure instead of the sales amount measure, and you fulfill the client requirement. And if this happened like 2 years back, what you would do is you would use something called a switch statement, which is DAX function, and you would switch the measures with the use of a manually created table, and you would fulfill the requirement for the client. But with measure calculation groups, this became a lot more easier. You don't want to use switch statements, or you don't want to you don't want to duplicate the report pages anymore. What you can simply do is create a calculation group to fulfill this requirement. How do you create a calculation group? So for this kind of requirement, for that, let's get back once again into our tabular editor. So we are right in the tabular editor, and as usual, we would create a new calculation group. Right click on the table, right click on the table folder, create new calculation group, and I would provide an appropriate name to my calculation group. In this case, I thought of saying it measure switch, measure switch. You guys can name it as per your requirement, and uh, uh, you guys can name it in any way you wish. So in this case, I thought of just going with this time around, and I would provide an appropriate attribute name or column name. I would call that as measure, and that leaves us with the calculation items. So I will have two calculation items in this case. One calculation item would be the sales amount, right? And the other calculation item would be the sales quantity. So two calculation items here. And what I would do basically is I would head back into my model once again. And in my model, I would go to navigate myself into the sales amount measure that I had created previously, and I would just simply create the aggregate that I had written for the sales amount, and I would paste it right here under the calculation item sales amount, and I would click on accept changes, and that's it. And I would replicate the same for the sales quantity as well. So I would head back into my model, head back into my model, navigate myself to the sales quantity measure, and copy the aggregate that I had written, very basic aggregate that's available for the sales quantity, and I would paste it right in my calculation item sales quantity. And that's about it. And what you do is you just save your model and get back into the model in Power BI, and you should be able to see the measure switch calculation group in the right hand side of your screen. But just to be in the safe side, make sure that you guys click on this refresh now button that pops up in highlighted in yellow, and you guys should be fine off, and you have created a measure switch in just a couple of minutes, very simply, in a straightforward way with calculation groups. And you have to put this into use right now, right? So how do you do that? What we usually do is we use that as a filter. So I would create some room for a filter here, or maybe I would put that on right on top. I would get a copy of the year filter that exists right now, and I would replace that with the calculation switch, measure switch measure with the attribute measure under the measure switch calculation group that we just created. And that's basically it. Basically, all you need to do is, if you want to see analytics with sales amount, just click on sales amount, and it would give you the default analytics that's available. And if you want to see analytics with sales quantity, click on sales quantity, and you should see the visualizations revert back to sales quantity in this particular screen. So sales amount, click on sales amount, sales quantity, click on sales quantity. So that's basically it. So that concludes the measure switch demo that I had for today. So I hope you guys are pretty much clear with that in terms of how you should go about measure switches. So that's a really useful and a straightforward way to provide repeating, usually repeating analytics requirements with different base measures kind of scenario. it's basically really ideal for a situation like that. So that's measure switch for you. And this takes us to the third demo today, which is relationship switch. Right. So for relationship switch, for you guys to get a better understanding of relationship switch, I should get you guys into my model level. Basically, my model view in Power BI. And in the model view, I should get your attention to these particular two dimension and the fact tables. The fact table is the sales fact. Let me just clear that a bit so that it's a lot more clear. Oh, that's better. And so the fact table here is the sales fact table, and the dimension table here is the date dimension table. You can see in here the date dimension table behaves as a role-playing dimension. So what is a role-playing dimension? It is a dimension, it is a single dimension that is used for multiple purposes. That's basically that. For example, in this case, in this case, you have two relationships between the date key and the order date key and the ship date key. Basically, date key refers to two different attributes or keys in the sales fact table, which are ship date key and the order date key, right? So what this would provide at the end of the day is with currently it would provide you order date level analytics. So it would provide you analytics with order date, but if you shift this measure back to ship date, it would provide you analytics with the ship date key. Usually to get the use as so in case, let's say your client wants to see ship date and order date level analytics and ship date level analytics as well. So what you do at this stage is you would create two separate measures, making you would create two separate measures to refer to the respective relationships. So for example, if the client wants ship date level analytics, you would create a measure directing Power BI to use the relationship between ship date key and the date key and to do analytics with that. And if the client wants order date level analytics, you would create another measure directing Power BI to use the relationship between the order date key and the date key. So that's how it was provided previously. And once again, you would repeat a lot of logic there and you would have multiple measures with the same repeating logic to fulfill these requirements. So this is once again not the most effective way to go about things in the with consideration to the recent past. So how I would just provide show you guys how it was done previously as well. So previously, so just think there was a requirement like this. So that would be demo 3. And basically, so this entire report is based on order date level analytics, right? Because it's the only active it's the only active relationship at this stage, right? So just think that the client wanted to see the line chart by ship date level analytics as well. So what you used to do previously in such circumstances is you would ideally create a duplicate of this line chart and keep it somewhere around here. And what you would do is you would create a separate measure referring with a function called use relationship, and which would refer to the ship date key and the date key in the date dimension. And you would have the sales amount as usual, and you would basically have this measure around. You would create a separate measure to refer to that particular relationship since it's inactive, and basically you would replace the existing base measure at this stage, which is sales amount. You would replace it with ship date, and that should provide you with the ship date level analytics. You can see slight differences, but not massive differences, I guess. Right, so yeah, it's very slight differences. You can see around 0.94 mil here, and here it's around 0.91 mil. So slight differences, but I hope you guys can see the effect. So this is how you be used to fulfill requirements before calculation groups came into play. But with calculation groups, it's a lot more easier to do this. So let's see how we can fulfill this requirement with calculation groups. So for that, I would head myself back to the tabular editor once again, and I would create a calculation group as usual. In this case, it's calculation group, and I would call this calculation group as relationship switch, hopefully. Yeah, relationship switch. Yeah, that sounds okay to me. So I would go with relationship switch, and I would immediately get myself into the attribute name, and I would rename my attribute name to relationship. And we have two relationships to play around here, right? The order date relationship and the ship date relationship. So what I would do is I would create two separate calculation items for these two relationships. One is the order date, and the other one would be the ship date. So two different relationships and two different calculation items. And what I would do immediately is I would get back. Now, what I need to do next is I need to make sure that I have the logic for order date and ship date, right? So what I would do is I would immediately head back to my data model and navigate myself to my existing solution, which is the ship date solution, which is with the use relationship. So just to explain, if you guys don't know what use relationship is, it's used to make sure that any inactive take use of it. It's used to use inactive relationships for analytics. So in this case, as I showed you previously, in this particular, in the model view, you can see that ship date key and date key is inactive. But what I had done here with the use relationship function is I had used ship date key and date key, and I had based the sales amount measure on that. So that's what the use relationship measure does. So what I would do for start is I would just copy this from my existing solution, which is this solution, copy existing measure, which is this measure. I would copy its logic, and I would simply just paste it right into my ship date logic in the ship date paste it into my ship date calculation item. Why do I do that? Because this logic was written by default to use the ship date relationship. So it's ideally the same thing that we would be using, right? Doing, right? So we might as well just copy this and just paste it right here, right? So that is that. And once again, we need to replicate the same thing that we did for the first demo. which is to replace the sales amount with a measure called selected measure with the function called selected measure, and that's basically it. Basically, you have a relationship here. You can refer this with any measure you have, and it would use the inactive relationship between the ship date key and the date key. Right. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you have uh, something same or something similar for the order date key as well, to use that order date relationship, right? So what you do is you copy the same logic that you modified for ship date, and you would paste it under order date calculation item. And the next thing what you would do is you would basically get yourself into the use relationship function, and you would replace this order date key with ship date key with order date key. That's it. And you have your two calculation items ready in the calculation group. So that's simply it. And what you would do is you would save the changes as usual and head yourself back into the model. And you can see the relationship switch calculation group here itself in your in the right hand side of your screen. And you would simply click on refresh now, just to be in the safe side. And that's about it. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you solve this out with calculation, with the calculation group that we created, right? So with calculation groups, you don't want to use this, have a duplicate of this line chart anymore. So you would simply remove that, and you would do some space alignment here. And what you would do is you would create a new filter. For that, I would just copy the year filter that I already have, and I would paste it. And what I would do is I would make sure that I refer to the relationship switch calculation group that I created, the attribute relationship in the relationship calculation switch calculation group that I just created, and I would just get that it replaced. Basically, I would refer that filter to that particular relationship. Next thing is just to click things around and just see how things work. So let's see how things work. So we would click on order date key, and you would see no change because order date key is a relationship that's already active. And this visual just shows the sales amount by the respective order date key and this line chart. So if you move into ship date key, you can clearly see the differences. You can clearly see how things are changing, right? So order date key, and you can see the line chart. And ship date key, you can see a difference in the line chart. So this shows analytics with ship date key, and this shows analytics with order date key. So that's how you basically fulfill this requirement for calculation with this relationship requirement with calculation groups. So that's about that demo to you. That leads to us to two very simple demos at the end, two very simple number formatting situations that you usually have with client requirements. One requirement is the decimal places requirement. So a problem you usually face is that there can be requirements from different clients to see specifically the sales amount figures in different decimal places, right? So you would have a team of end users, and one particular client or one particular end user would want to see by first decimal place, and another set of end users might want to see by zero decimal places. They just want to see the whole figures, and another set of end users would want to see a bit more detail with second decimal places, right? Before calculation groups, how we used to fulfill this requirement is you would duplicate the same measure multiple times and you would format it into 0 decimal places if the requirement is to have no decimal places, which is the whole number, and first decimal places if the requirement is to have the first decimal, and second decimal places, and if the requirement is to have 2 decimal places. And that's how basically you would have this requirement in place. But with calculation groups, you don't want to do that anymore, right? You can simply do that very simply with a calculation group. How do you do that? Let's, as usual, we would head back into our tabular editor, and inside the tabular editor, I would navigate into tables and create new and calculation group, and I would create my calculation group as and I would provide a name for that saying decimal places. I guess that should be fine for now. So I will just go with that, decimal places. And the next thing I want to do is I would head back into my attribute or the column name, and I would rename that as decimals. Decimals. And in this requirement, I need to fulfill 3 different decimal place requirement, right? The first one would be 0 decimal places, so that would be 0. And the second one would be first decimal, 1 decimal places. And the other one would be 2 decimal places. 3 different requirements, right? So those will be the 3 calculation items from it, right? And what I basically need to do is simply nothing, just to use the selected measure function in my calculation, in my calculation items. So that's basically it. You don't want to do anything with that, because the difference or the formatting happens with the format string expression that you see under every calculation item, right? So for in this case, it's 0 decimal places. So what you would do is just mention a 0 here. You would format it as a whole number. So this is how you format it, as a whole number with calculation groups. So you would just enter a quotation, and inside the quotation you would enter a 0, so that would format it as a whole number. And the next requirement is the first decimal place requirement. So how you format it to a first decimal place is quotation once again, and just 0.0. That's about it. And it would format your data or your values to the first decimal place. And when it comes to the second decimal place, you would basically have 0.00 in the same way with the quotations, and that's basically it. You have your decimal place requirement fulfilled in here. And the next thing, as usual, is to save your model and just get back to your existing model, and you should be able to see decimal places calculation group right here in the right hand side of your screen, and just click on refresh now to be in the safe side. And that's basically about it. And you have this decimal places here. And the next thing you want to do is you want to use this particular base measures and just create a table, right? And my base measures would, so in this case, I would use the base measure sales amount, and basically I would use, what can I use? So I would use custom, I guess. That should be okay, right? And I would just use the decimal places calculation, the decimals attribute in the decimal places calculation group we just created. And I would just click on the values and and it would show you the differences, right? So you can see it reflects to almost both ends, because this was this should go out actually, because this had specifically this was the previous solution. So this had we had separate measures for 0 decimal places, first decimal places, and 2 decimal places here. So that was our former solution that should ideally go out, because you don't want to repeat measures anymore that way. You can use a base measure and basically shift between the number of decimals you want your end user to see, or you can simply provide this as a slicer, as I had done right here, to a client, and the client can select the kind of the number of decimal places he or she wants to see the respective reports in. And so that's basically a very basic, very basic scenario that and a useful scenario that you can go ahead with calculation groups. The other scenario is a very similar scenario that that's also really important for you guys to know, a similar and simple. So I would hit myself back into that. That's also a number formatting scenario. So let's have a look at that and see how things would go. Right. For the number formatting scenario, once again, I would hit myself into my data model and I just showcase this scenario for you guys. Right. So I had a requirement where I had my measures shown in cards, as you can. This was actually a change that was requested by a client. I had cards showing in my report pages this way for various base measures. It was sales amount, sales quantity, and so and so. And the client told me that basically for a specific scenario, if you don't have sales, rather than showing blank, just make sure that shows 0 instead. So I was like, okay. And what I did was I created a separate measure for the cards that would just coalesce the base measure, and that would just show 0 instead of 0 instead of blank. So that would look something like this. So it would literally show like this. This was the measure this was the kind of measure I created, and it would basically coalesce 0 with blank, and that was basically how things went. But I realized later on that this causes issues in my drill through pages, which is you can say drill through is another functionality in Power BI, but let's not talk about that. I just think that I realized that this issue existed in some other pages which show tabular views, which consisted tables as visuals. So how did that issue come up? So just think if there was a table that had simply no cells for a particular scenario, it would just replace that with a 0 and it would show it in that table, and it was an entire mess there, right? Because it shows you all the variances that could occur between a fact and a dimension, and since there is no data between that, rather than it not showing, it would show up as 0, and it didn't look good for the table. So to fulfill that requirement, I created another measure just to make sure that I keep the tables on the right in the right way, I would create another measure without the coalesce. In here, I had used the coalesce to replace the blanks with the zeros. And here, I would not use the coalesce or replace the blanks. I would leave the blanks as it is, so that in the tables, the specific records with no data would not turn out, and the table would not be a mess. This is ideally a repetition of measures for a requirement that you can simply be fulfilled with a single calculation group, right? This was a requirement that I did before calculation groups, but after calculation groups came up, I realized that this was something that was possible to be done with calculation groups as well. So how do you simply do that? You would have a calculation group with two calculation items, one with the code is 0 and the other one without the code is 0, right? So very simple. I hope it's really simple for you guys right now, since I explained so many scenarios for you guys. So let's do this final demo and complete this session. So let's head back into our tabular editor as usual, and let's create the calculation group, and I would call my calculation group as what can I say, blanks. I would call that, I'm just thinking about an appropriate name, so I would call that yeah, maybe I'm just thinking of an appropriate name here, so I will call this blanks handling for now. That would be all right for now, but in real cases, please do think twice, or even tries to provide a user-friendly name, because it's really necessary for self-service BI, and when your end users are using these calculation groups for self-service BI, right? So make sure that's ahead kept in the right direction. And my attribute name would be blank type, and that would be my attribute name. As usual, I just renamed the attribute with blank type. And the next thing I would do is I would replace, I would make sure that I have two calculation items for this requirement, right? One is 0, and the other one is blank. Right. So that's about it. Now it's just about having our basic logic in the respective calculation items. So for that, I would head back into my data model. And in my data model, I would get myself into the very basic coalesce functionality, logic with the coalesce functionality. And I would copy that. Oh, maybe I would call this blank and non-blank rather than blank and 0, I guess. Right, yep. I think that makes a lot of sense. So that would be blank and non-blank here. Right. So for the non-blank is basically replace the blanks with 0. I would just place this logic. And as I did for the previous demos, I would replace the base measure that's given here, which is sales amount over sales quantity, by the selected measure function, so that based on the measure that's referred to, it would apply the respective coalesce logic in this case. And for the blank, I wouldn't do anything. I would simply just give the selected measure, right? That's about it. And the next thing I would do, I would just save this data model. I would save the model in tabular editor, and you should see your model once again. It's the same thing. You should be able to see the blanks handling calculation group that we just created in the right hand side of your screen. And what you want to do is just refresh now just to be in the safe side, right? And that's about it. And what you would do is you would have next is you would use blanks handling as a slicer. We would use the blank type attribute in the blanks handling calculation group as a slicer. And the next thing I want to do is I don't want to use these measures which I specifically specified to use colas and not use colas anymore. I can remove that out, and I can use my sales amount measure as usual. I guess I would just go for a card so that the change is much more visible for you guys. So yeah, card it is. And all you need to do is select between blank and non-blank, and you can clearly see the effect of the logic that we created with the respective calculation group. So that concludes my session for today. So once again, thank you very much, Adriano, for having me in. It's a privilege to speak at the South Florida Power BI user group. Hoping to do better things moving further. And please, if you have any kind of feedback for me, I'm more than happy to accept it. You guys can scan the QR code that you can see in the screen right now and provide me with your valuable feedback so that I can improve myself further and be a better contributor to this community. And if you guys have any questions, you guys can connect with me through LinkedIn, and please follow me on Twitter as well. And please follow South Florida Power BI user group on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. Thank you very much, Adriano, for having me. It's a privilege to be here once again. Thank you.
All right, and hang on a second there, Thimantha. First of all, thank you very much for being here with us and presenting, sharing some great knowledge information with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, and before we conclude, we have to talk about a drawing. So for the Power BI Fest, there is a drawing on which we are carrying out in just a minute here. So folks, let's talk about it real quick as to what are the prizes. So let's take a quick look at it here on the prize you'll enter to win. Now, today is the first drawing, and if you want to, one second. If you want to come in and participate on future drawings, just follow the Power BI Fest hashtag, whether it is on Twitter, as well as right here, how can I say, whether it's on Twitter or LinkedIn, just pound Power BI Fest. And give me just a second here so I can get the second screen shared. All right. So I believe now everybody can see it. Okay, so what are we talking about here? So as far as prizes, so we have a $25 gift card. So from InfoRiver, one of our sponsors, folks. So check it out, InfoRiver. They are giving two $25 gift cards. Then we have also books that come from our other sponsor, which is Packet. On that batch, what we have is, as you can see here, we have three different titles. On those titles, we'll be giving one book for expert data modeling with Power BI by Bakshi as the author. We're also going to do the Power Query Cookbook by Andrea. And this is not even out yet, folks. We are giving you like a chance for a book that's on pre-order right now as well. So we will have 2 of those books out there. Now, if you have not registered today, remember, you can go out there and register for tomorrow. As I said, all you gotta do is just go to, for example, Twitter and check out Power BI Fest. As such, all you gotta do is enter the Power BI Fest, and you will see here, go on for the instructions, and you see forms where to fill out and everything. So you can enter, and tomorrow will be our second raffle drawing, and also on Saturday on the Power BI Fest event. If you have not done so, also register to the Power BI Fest event. Just type in powerbifest.com at the website, say register. So you can register to the event. Just click into register. Straightforward, real quick. So let's go back here to where we're at with great. So we talk about the prizes. We are going to get now the respondents, which we will be putting right here to see. So as I said, and while I'm getting the information from the people, we're going to talk about the books that are eligible right here. You can see the expert data modeling book. That's one of the prizes. There'll be one of these books. Then we also have the cookbook that you can see here. And there we go. We have the Power Query Cookbook. That's another book that you'll be running for. So 1 copy of this, 1 copy of the expert data modeling book, and 2 copies of the upcoming Extending Power BI with Python and R. Mind you, that book, as I said, is not out on print yet, but when available, you'll be getting a copy of that. So let's get the names over here. Just a second, I'm just putting together here all the names. Now, mind you, make sure that you are eligible for the prizes. The details are also explained in the forms. So we're going to put everyone here on the wheel of names. So you can see here the website, wheel of names is the website. We're going to enter all the names here. Those are the names that came up, as you can see live. And we're going to click to spin. Before that, let's identify exactly what will be the first spin for. So let's outline the prizes here real quick. Two seconds. There we go here. So before we spin, we have a clear picture of what it's going to be. We're going to start actually with, we're going to do this. We're going to do a book. Let's put 1 gift card at the end, 1 gift card at the beginning, somewhere in the middle. Here we'll have a 1 gift card. We're going to put one of these books here, and we're going to put the other book up here. So the order is going to be, we're going to do the packet books, we're going to do expert data modeling with Power BI book. Then we're going to run the second winner. We'll get the extending Power BI with Python and R from Luca Zavarella, under the understanding that this book will be only available when it comes to print or after it's printed or available to the general public. Third prize we're going to run will be the first, will be one gift card of $25 from InfoRiver. Then the fourth prize we're going to run will be the Power Query Cookbook. Then we're going to do the second book here, or in other words, one book from Luca Zaffarelli for the extending Power BI with Python and R. And finally, we're going to do the other $25 gift card. So we are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spins. All right, folks. And remember, support our sponsors there. You see the books from Packet, great titles, as well as InfoRiver, who has a great product out there for you to work with Power BI. So I got all the names that we have in the forms, those who went out to the web, fill out the form, and are listed in here. So without further ado, for the first prize we're looking here, expert data modeling with Power BI. And folks, if you do not win today, stay tuned. There is tomorrow and the weekends also a choice, an opportunity for you to win. So let's click to spin. There we go, spinning, and the winner is all right. So it's Oluwole got the book. There we go. We got a winner here for the first prize. Now let's remove his name. And next will be the Extending Power BI with Python and R by Luca Zaffarelli. Let's go for a spin. Get over here and oh, boom, Matheus Motola. You get a winner here for Matheus Motola. And he gets the extending book. Then next, now let's see who gets the $25 gift card. So let's move here and we have Achata, I believe is the name, is the winner for the $25 gift card from our sponsor, InfoRiver. Next, we have the Power Query book. All right, we have Gilova here as the winner for our Power Query book. Next, we have extending Power BI with Python and R. Let's go for a spin. And Shobit B is the winner. And finally, we have the $25 gift certificate from our sponsor, InfoRiver. And the winner is Mario Rodriguez. All right, folks, that concludes the winners for today's drawing. What I'm gonna do is just save this information. As you all saw, it is live selection and saving the names here. And tomorrow we will have the second draw. Remember, folks, participate, engage, get a chance to win. You can do that by going either on Twitter, just do the pound Power BI Fest, and you will see our posts for the live drawing as well, which talks about where to get in. Right here, fill out this form. You just fill out the form, send it over. Your name will be in for tomorrow. And if you're not a winner either today or tomorrow, still get a chance to win on Saturday, which is Power BI Fest. So also remember to register, as you're required to register to the Power BI Fest to be part of the raffle here. All right. So let's get back at it with Thimantha here. And 2 seconds, Thimantha.
Sure.
So we have all the winners, and folks, remember to go out there and register for the Power BI Fest. So, Thimantha, any final words here as we concluded?
Yeah, congratulations to all the winners in the raffle today, and thank you very much for Adriano for having me in. Yeah, I hope that you guys got something out of this session, and please do provide your valuable feedback to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I just want to improve myself further and be a better contributor. So yeah, so those are the final words from my end. So thank you very much, Adrian, once again.
All right. So, folks, again, couple here with Thimantha saying congratulations to the winners. You will be contacted by our sponsors about how to proceed on or with the prizes here. Now, remember also to register to the Power BI Fest coming up this Saturday, and where you will also see presentations from top presenters around the world, including Thimantha yourself. You're truly Thimantha.
Yeah.
You know, where he's going to be delivering some great sessions over there, folks. So do not delay. Register to the event. And remember, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Now, with that, thank you all. Have a great night. Good night, Thimantha. Just hang on tight for a minute.
Sure.
And
Good night.
see you all. Have a great one. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, let me see if there's any questions. Sorry about that. I almost missed it. Oh yeah, we have Winston here saying, "Hey, great presentation. Thanks, Thimantha."
Thank you, Winston. I hope you enjoyed my session. Thank you very much for your feedback.
All right. All right, folks. Have a good night, everybody. Goodbye.